how successful. Um, See, the thing is that I don't view things as successful or not successful, because for me it is about, um, more than even recognition, being sensitive enough to the ethos of diverse human nature which is around us, which we are completely unaware of. And it is not about, again, successful or unsuccessful or not successful, because all these are European and American term, because it's not a competition to become success. One big thing happened in the recent days, that on April 22nd, 2019, the Madras High Court Madurai bench passed a very landmark judgment to prohibit medically unnecessary interventions on newborn intersex infants. To know more about intersex infants, we need to understand the difference between sex, gender, and sexual orientation. The term sex means your birth identity. You never decided to be born as male or a female or a intersex person. Who are intersex? Intersex people are not hijiras or transgender people. Transgender is a gender identity, hijra is a community identity. So, whereas sex is something, your birth identity and biological, and so it is, you're born as, you cannot change it. You cannot change your sex, but you can change your gender identity. And when it comes to sex identity, we believe in the binary sexes. So when the baby is born when the stereotypical male reproductive organ, it is male. When the baby is born with stereotypical female reproductive organ, it is female. When a baby is born with a kind of reproductive organ which you cannot classify or fit in with the binary notions of the sex identity, then those babies are known as intersex babies. There are more than 40 plus intersex variations, recognized intersex variations. Not all intersex conditions are visible at birth. So when the baby is born on the day one, just because they cannot, the doctors couldn't fit these babies with the binary sexes, they change the appearance of the baby to look like a male or a female, and mostly like a male for the property inheritance and a lot of things in India, what is that. And this comes from the allopathic system. None of the indigenous medicinal systems or prescribing for such surgeries and all that. So the Madras High Court Madurai bench has banned these surgeries, stating that who are the parents or the guardians or the doctors to decide the sex identity of the baby. So they kind of also went to an extent, the court went to an extent and said that the consent of the parents cannot be considered as the consent of the child. And it upholds the constitutional rights. The good thing is it cites all the dharmic narratives and the beautiful stories and everything. The term intersex may be new, but even before the term intersex was introduced, we have such communities, so whom we call as indigenous gender variants or indigenous gender minorities, or who are indigenous gender variants, or the term LGBT is more American, and it derived from the post-colonial feminist movements, and during that time, so then we have LGBTI plus, a lot of things are adding on. Even before the term LGBTI was in use, we had beautiful indigenous communities for more than, with at least more than 3,800 to 4,200 years history. How I know that is something, Buddha was born before 2,500 years and he lived up to 89 years. And even before Buddha, the oldest tradition is Jain tradition and their darshanas, Jain darshanas, and so there's this at least 3,800 to 4,200 years old. So, but the very kind of recognition for these people who don't belong to the binary sex identities is even recognized. Rigveda calls them as Tritiya Prakriti. I mean, Tritiya Prakriti doesn't mean that third nature. Literally, because Sanskrit word, each word have more than 30 meanings according to your own perception, exposure and understanding towards the particular word, you will understand or live the word. So sometimes, very often, we tend to misinterpret because of the very kind of limited knowledge or the circle we live in. So the term Tritiya Prakriti means people who are beyond dual nature. Dual nature as Stri and Purush. And even again, we are not giving a concrete definition for what is Stri and what is Purush. That is, pink is for girls or blue is for boys, and most of our princes, kings had long hair, and even in art forms, the Shringar was common for Stri and Purush, and the way the expressions and everything. There is nothing known as the very kind of masculine and feminine as defined by the Victorian values. Even the term transgender recently arrived. And before 30 years, you cannot, kind of undergo a surgery where a person who was assigned as male at birth, transitioning to be a trans woman. I mean, now if you look at them, you cannot differentiate them between a stereotypical, so-called stereotypical women who live in the society. Because of the medical advancement, they can have silicone breasts, do vaginoplasty, and lot of things. And before 30 years, it was impossible. And the indigenous medical systems like Ayurveda or Siddha or different indigenous medical systems around the world, medicinal systems, they don't kind of go with all this. They were far more kind of receptive to accommodate the exclusive nature of all these communities to protect the diversity. So